Nothing has frustrated me more.
Yeah, it's so funny. I got Vince here who's grimacing every time. He knows how it ends, but he's still like, don't grab it.
Don't do it.
Marco Rubio, if you saw Time Magazine before, obviously last night, the future of the GOP here, rising star, whatever you want to call it. I know this sounds silly, but that gulp of water, it's going to be on SNL this weekend. You know it is. There's 1,000 of those kind of clips that we played. And this will come to define him. Bobby Jindal. We all remember his name, right?
It wasn't a Bobby Jindal thing.
This is the curse.
I don't know.
This is the curse of the Republican rebuttal. And that's what it's going to become known as.
Now, he was good this morning. To be fair to him,
Next
he
year
made a joke about it. He went on every network this morning, right? And he reached for the water and everything.
What else can he say?
Fair enough.
At this point, you've got to make a joke of yourself after you made a of yourself the night before.
Say what you were saying, Dominic. There's ways to do these things that you could have avoided.
That's terribly unfair. The man has a thirst for higher office.
This is the man who said bitter tea last night. Don't even give me that answer. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that when you're in a high-profile situation, Senator, I hope you're watching, you envision every scenario that can go wrong in advance. So I'm a sweater. So when I've had high-profile debates, seriously.
Share a little more. Yeah.
So the crew had to turn up the air conditioning because I will start sweating. I had to have a handkerchief, and when the prompter may go down. What am I going to do next? So I've got to have hard copy. Water, rule 101. Everybody has water. Somebody would be out of a job today if I was Senator Rubio. The water is right here out of sight. So that if I need it, I can look cool and reaching for my water.
He's a U.S. Senator. He is an advanced person. He is a body guy. He has a communications director.
All
he has
guys.
Right, and all jobs that I've done in campaigns, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that can't happen. That can't happen.
But here's the thing I don't understand. Why? And I'm a Republican, but I look at these rebuttals and they're so dry and they're so lifeless. I mean, even when the words and the proposals are inspiring or make sense.
You can't win. You're coming after the biggest room where the guy is, and then you're in this little closet.
Right. I don't understand why they don't do it before a room full of people or an
Well, didn't Bob McDonald do that a couple of years ago? And he sort of looked like he was doing a mini state house. I think he did in the Virginia legislature.
Yes, right.
Well, and that didn't come across all that well.
The problem with this discussion is it's obscuring the bigger problem that the two addresses show.
Don't you ruin my fun here. We're talking about the flop sweat and the reach for water.
Can we get this man some water?
The Rand Paul address.
I was getting there.
The notion that Marco Rubio, a moment ago you said there's a difference between the Republican conservatives and the Republican moderates. The notion that John Boehner is in ideological terms a moderate is a fiction. There isn't one real pro-choice vote in that caucus. There isn't really one vote for an investment strategy. What's happened is that wing of the party has made people like Rubio seem like a moderate if you're inside the tent, but if you're outside the tent, Republican Party is veering off the road, and those two addresses last night highlighted it.
We have the perfect person, because Congresswoman, the climate in 2010 and the climate in 2012, and I saw this firsthand for you, that surge of the promise of what the Tea Party could be. It was an appealing label. And then in 2012, all of a sudden, when there were some folks that weren't ready for prime time that came in there and that were more interested, in sticking a finger in the eye than rather doing the difficult part of governing, it became less appealing. Talk about the challenge of navigating what was a good principle of what the Tea Party stood for versus what it's turned into for so many, and what, frankly, Rand Paul has done to make this difficult here, I can imagine, for the Boehners of the world and the rest of the leadership.
It's a combination of factors. One is that there was this within certainly not every segment of the media, but it's true in terms of atmospherics, there was this successful effort, I think you have to say it, to select elements of the Tea Party presentation or of those who participated to make them look like outliers, to make them look as though, hey, they're not like you. And in fact, most of the folks I know in the Hudson Valley who had an interest in those principles actually were eminently sane and simply trying with all their might to get past what they felt was going to be a really overreaching and ill-managed federal government. And that still remains the issue. But the other problem that we had, or challenge that we had, was we didn't take the Senate in 2010. We did take the House majority. Well, you can't govern from 1/3 of the legislative process. So to a lot of folks who followed the Tea Party and even sympathized with it, what they saw was that here we elected this massive wave to the House of Representatives, and you guys got virtually nothing done. Well, we were a crucial stopping action for an agenda that could have moved forward with much greater speed, but it's much harder to prove a counterpositive.
In an environment where people want things to get done, just coming up as a stopping action, I think, may rub people the wrong way. I think the other big problem with the Tea Party is that so much of it was anger-based. Right. Some of it was anger-based, and it seemed like they found religion on some of these principles that hadn't been there prior to the election of Barack Obama.
I think one of the other things they've started to see and they're going to continue to see is I think they have a bit of an identity problem now. As a consultant, I've been both sides. I've worked with the Tea Party, I've had to work against them. I've been on both sides of that fight. Honestly, I don't like either side of that fight, but I've had to do both. They started out as a movement. Then they got really organized, and then they started to get money, and now they have become, once they become a party, more than they are a movement, they're becoming everything they were almost against when they first got together.
Did they take?
Right.
They took Koch brothers' money, and they took Dick Armey's suggestions, and they abandoned the populist element, and they turned into conventional austerity.
Because remember, Richard, when it first started, and Andrew covered it, it wasn't a Republican or a Democrat thing. It was more of a libertarian kind of vibe. Right. And then it quickly became an element of the GOP. They got mad because they were being marginalized by leadership. So then they said, you can't tell us what to say. Then the money started coming in. And now you've got a situation where on the night where the Republican Party wants to speak with one voice, you got Rand Paul delivering a message where he condemns the Republican Party equally as much as he does the Democrats. And then it's like, where are we going?
And my question is, why are they being treated as a party? They don't have their own line. So either they have, and that's where the part of the identity crisis. Are you part of the Republican Party or are you out on your own? If you're out on your own, then
for better or worse, to say we're not going to treat with them because they're not a formal political party.
I don't think they've defined the politics as much as they've defined a few specific races that they take credit for, which then they try to turn into we're defining a much broader.
But party leadership wanted all the benefits of the Tea Party. They wanted to be able to use that to attract votes and say, we're the party that's got them, but then they wouldn't get in line. So it seems like they were just trying to co-opt the
I think they're slowly taking the Independence Party path, to be quite honest with you. That's where they're going to head.
All these machinations aside, fundamentally, what the Tea Party represented, certainly I can speak to, the Hudson Valley of New York, which is where Metro North shades into really upstate, suburbs into exurbs, right? So, it's a fairly good representative swing district. People still sympathize with the ideas that folks who participated in and identify themselves as Tea Party, they sympathize with the fiscal ideas that they represented. People are very sympathetic to them. But what they saw on the ground, what we were forced to deal with because we didn't have the Senate, and yes, that was thanks to some rather poor, I would say, primary choices in the 2010 race, but because we didn't have the Senate, we were really compelled to work within a framework that didn't suit the Tea Party goals. Well, but yes, as part of democracy, and in fact, the House Republican Conference respects that.
But you know what the challenging? I think the challenging part, and unfortunately part of the legacy we spoke about last night, is also an element of democracy of primaries. And I think one of the legacies of the Tea Party is, if you, under Reagan's Big Ten philosophy, you could be a Chris Shays Republican and be pro-choice, and you still had a place at the table. Now, I mean, from guys in the Senate with 30 years to freshman Republicans, you'll have a primary challenge as soon as you vote no on a single issue. And that, I think is bigger challenge than demographics and everything for the Republican Party for
Totally
who you
agree.
can and who you can't recruit to run.
And I think that's, again, I'm going to go back to my idea about the identity crisis. Is spoiler really the title that the Tea Party wants? Is that what they want to be?
All right. When we come back here, we're going to be talking about what happened yesterday that wasn't the State of the Union, and I think it should make everybody think twice about where we're going politically in Washington. It's not just about dysfunction, it's also about tone. Take it to the Senate chambers for one of the most contentious fights that you definitely didn't see yesterday. It was over the confirmation of Chuck Hagel, and it wasn't about what he said about Israel or what he said about gays. You'll see what some folks are calling him, including members of the party that he grew up in, Ted Cruz and others. Stay with us. We'll be right back.